Now, in 1973, the Bakewell woman, Wendy Sewell, was murdered. The man convicted of this crime was Stephen Downing. He served 27 years in prison before he was released in 2002 after the case against him was quashed in the High Court. But former police officer Chris Clark from the Norfolk Constabulary, who's been studying the case, thinks the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe, was responsible. Let's speak to Chris Clark now. Good morning.
Good morning, Colin.
What makes you think the Yorkshire Ripper was responsible?
From the nature and method of Wendy's attack, taking away the pickaxe handle, and if it was replaced with a hammer, it would be identical to Peter Sutcliffe's later methods in the Yorkshire Ripper series.
It sounds quite circumstantial, this evidence, though.
In 1973, Sutcliffe was travelling down the M1 in order to see his sister, who was in married quarters in Cambridgeshire at the time. Would be regularly driving past the spur from the Bakewell area. The method that Wendy's clothing was removed was identical to quite a few catalogued crimes that Sutcliffe committed. Also, the frenzied nature of the attack and the injuries sustained to the back of her head.
But it wouldn't really stand up in a court of law, would it, Chris?
Oh, not at the moment, no. I'm looking overall at 17 cases where I feel quite strongly the police should reopen the cases.
And do you think that will happen?
I'm hoping so. At the moment, I've got two families from two victims who are putting pressure on the various police forces involved.
And you mentioned about the families there. I mean, is it worth digging all this up and risking upsetting these families, particularly in Derbyshire's case, Wendy Sewell's family?
In Wendy's case, obviously they still have no full closure, albeit they thought at the time there was. So at the end of the day, it's to reach out to the family to try and lead them in a different direction.
And what about talking to the Yorkshire Ripper himself about this? Do you think officers need to do that?
I believe firmly that, having been done in the past by the Chief Constable Keith Halliwell, that Sutcliffe would not admit any further offences.
Right, okay, so he's keeping stum. This case was actually being reinvestigated in 2002, the Wendy Sewell case, and the only suspect officers couldn't eliminate was Stephen Downing. Do you accept that this was a full and thorough investigation?
It was full and thorough in regards to what they were looking at. I still believe that they were parochial in their thinking, and they weren't looking outside their own boundaries for the perpetrator, having found a partial fingerprint and a palm print on the murder weapon.
So what happens from here on in? You say you have some evidence to push this forward, not just in the case of Wendy Sewell, but other cases as well, 17 other unsolved crimes which you might consider Sutcliffe responsible for. So what happens from here on in? How does this case progress?
At the moment, I'm still building up contact with the victims' families, and ultimately what I hope to happen is the weight of strength will help the Home Office to actually realise that there's an investigation that needs to be reopened.
Thank you for talking to us this morning. Appreciate your time. You heard that from former police officer Chris Clark from the Norfolk Constabulary, talking to us about the death of Wendy Sewell in Bakewell in 1973. Now, we did invite Derbyshire Police onto the programme this morning. It declined to come on. However, in a statement it says there is no evidence to connect Peter Sutcliffe with the murder of Wendy Sewell. The statement adds the murder was thoroughly investigated in 2002. 22 people were ruled out of the inquiry, but officers couldn't eliminate Stephen Downing as a suspect.